Hey, what is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, one thing I've been doing on this channel is when I'm not doing an analysis and I'm not giving you guys big news updates, I've been doing an Ask Me Anything series where you send me in your questions and I answer them as in-depth as I possibly can, and if I do believe that it is going to be a great video, I will also make a video about it. Well, that's exactly what I will be doing today. We are going to be taking a look at Castor Maritime, ticker symbol CTRM. Now, today's question does come from Leslie, and Leslie wants to know, hey Tyler, I've been watching your videos on Castor Maritime for quite some time now and have noticed that this pullback that they are seeing seems to be unusually big compared to previous ones. We have seen them dip from the news of direct offerings, but I can't seem to find or figure out why this one is so much worse. Would love your opinion. Thank you, Leslie. Well, thank you, Leslie, for sending in your question. I really do appreciate it. If you want to send in your own questions that may be featured on this channel, send them to me through Instagram, Twitter, leave them in the comment sections here, mention them in the Patreon. This one actually came from my Patreon as well. Also, with that being said, if you do want access to all of this information way before I post it on my channel, if you also want access to my trade portfolios, stock updates, trade alerts, if you want access to these videos early, go down to the link in the description. It'll bring you over to my Patreon, and that's where I'm fully transparent with all that info. Also, if you are looking to expand out into a new brokerage or start your own investment journey, go down to the referral link down below, click on the Webull referral link, open an account, deposit $100, and you'll get 2 free stocks valued all the way up to $1,850. But with that being said, let's go ahead, let's jump into this question. I think this is a big question, it's a great question, and I think there's a few different things that go into this question, so I definitely want to address all of them. So let's get this thing started. So whenever it comes to this question, let's just remind ourselves, why is this one so much worse, right? We've seen direct offerings in the past that have caused the stock price to kind of waver a little, but it'll typically tend to hold its level. Why is this one causing this stock to decrease so fast? Well, the reason why I believe so is because it's not just the direct offering. That's my true belief. I feel like there's an accumulation of things that are going on right now with Castor Maritime that are starting to cause investors to kind of shy away from the stock. There's 3 main reasons why I believe this is the case, and we're going to go into reason number 1 right now. Well, of course, reason number 1, whenever we consider it being a direct offering, is going to be the dilution that is taking place within Castor Maritime. Now, many of us are understanding, including myself, that this company is doing capital raising in order to generate or to bring in cash that will allow them to expand out their fleet, which they will then use to generate revenue, which will make it kind of worth it. It's almost like a reinvestment. And I understand that. I'm totally understanding that that is the route in which they're trying to take. The issue comes up whenever the dilution becomes just simply too much. That's the issue. Because we have to consider that going into 2020, at the end of 2019, this company only had 2.6 million outstanding shares. Going into the 4th month of 2021, only 16 months later, this company is sitting at 700 million outstanding shares. So as you can see, there is a significant difference in the amount of outstanding shares in which this company has, and through that, investors start to get a little bit nervous, right? We have to consider the fact that in 2019, if you owned 1% of Castor Maritime, if you maintain that same position, you would only own less than 0.01%. Your overall value, the value of your shares, decreased by over 100x, and that is a pretty big problem, right? Many investors are going to get frustrated with that. And so even if you are understanding, if you are totally, accepting that this is a thing that a company is doing in order to generate revenue in the future, that'll be a reinvestment, and that they are doing this now in the short term to better themselves long term, even if it hurts them for the next 6 months. That's understanding. But there's only so far that you can go. And I think that as they do continue to dilute shares down, it does change the fundamentals. It changes the foundation on which this company is operating. And through that, that is going to cause a lot of investors to want out. And as these investors do get a bad taste in their mouth, I do understand why we are starting to see a decrease in the stock price. Of course, if the stock price, or if the price at which the offering is done is less than what the stock is trading at, we'll typically see the stock price fall a little bit. So I do believe that this direct offering started this fall, but I think these next 2 reasonings are why a lot of people are just starting to get out as fast as they can. So let's go ahead, let's jump into reason number 2. Now, reason number 2 is going to come down to the valuation of Castor Maritime. I will go ahead and just say it now, it doesn't make sense. It truly doesn't make sense, especially at this point. You know, before the direct offering, it didn't really make sense then. I think at 90 cents, whenever the market cap was sitting at, well, I think 500 or 600 million, it just simply didn't make any sense. But now that they've gone and done a direct offering, that's just absolutely pushed the market cap way too high. I mean, after falling down, it's currently at 45 cents roughly. It still has a market cap of about $350 million. Now let's consider something. In the last quarterly report, the company reported earnings of about, or revenue of about $4.4 million. So on average, if we are going to push that out across 4 quarters, that's about $22 million roughly. Now, realistically, they're expanding their fleet, they're generating more revenue through their chartering, and so that number will likely go up. Maybe let's put it to 40 million. But even if they were capable of doing that in 1 year, how are we going to value this company at $350 million? It simply just doesn't make sense. If we take a look at their net asset value, it is way too high. I mean, let's take a look. Let's go ahead and let's look at a company that compares super similar to them, being Starbulk. So Starbulk is currently valued at about $1.5 billion, and they generate $700 million in revenue every single year. So that's about a 2-to-1 ratio, right? If we consider maybe Castor Maritime doing $30 million in revenue this year, that's still a 10-to-1 ratio. It is simply, it doesn't make sense, right? And even if, even if it did make sense, why would someone want to invest in the Castor Maritime whenever there are other companies like Starbulk whose valuations make more sense? Right? Because we have to consider there are value investors out there. There are people out there who are going to get into a company whenever the value or what the company is sitting at in comparison to what the potential is or what the revenues that they're generating are going to be. Then they will invest in the company because they are expecting that the stock price will then reflect the growth that, or the potential that they have. Well, there's the inverse. There's people who are going to invest into a company, and then if the valuation starts to not make sense at all, they will exit. I am one of those people. Simply, the valuation doesn't make sense. I don't think it's really made sense at any point within the last 2 months, but I think that there were other factors influencing the stock price that could have kept pushing it up, that we could have all seen some great gains. It just simply was not enough. So that's number 2. That's reason number 2. I think just the overall valuation of this company is starting to push the stock price down because a lot of investors are getting out, but we also have to consider something. Many investors aren't getting in. Right now, there is a big wave of value investing. There's a big wave of people who kind of shied away from growth stocks, and they're looking for stocks that are at a discount. And if you're looking for stocks at a discount who are trading at, a great PE, if they're trading at, and they had a great net asset value, if they have all of these things, Castor Maritime is not going to be a choice of yours. And the fact that we are seeing a rotation of value stocks pushes Castor Maritime out of the conversation, causing that stock price to drop and not meet much resistance because not many people are entering in on the company. Now, the third and final reason as to why I believe that it is falling just so much is the Baltic Dry Index. Now, this is going to be the BDI, and that's how I'll refer to it for the rest of this video. Well, the BDI has been doing phenomenal over the last few months. I mean, in March and February, or January, February, and even March, we saw it just constantly climbing. We're seeing 52-week highs, and it was doing a great job. But one thing we have seen over the last few weeks is that it has been declining. Now, this is not good for Castor Maritime because the BDI is going to be tracking the average charter rates in which a company like Castor Maritime can charge in order, for their services. So whenever the amount in which they are going to, on average, be able to charge in order to charter out maybe one of their ships or 2 of their ships, etc., if that's decreasing, the potential revenue in which they will receive from each one of those ships is also decreasing. So realistically, if we think about all of this tied together, well, now they've done a big, capital raising. They just brought in $125 million. They added so many shares to their outstanding share count, but the Baltic Dry Index is decreasing. So they just did a big capital raising, diluted shares down a lot. But the amount that they're even going to be able to generate off of that capital is decreasing. And then if we mix in the fact that their overall valuation in itself already doesn't make much sense, then you add in all of those outstanding shares, that's just going to even more make the valuation not make any sense. Then I think we start to get a bigger picture as to why we're seeing this thing fall with no resistance. Because in the past, maybe it's fallen because of the direct offering, but the valuation was a little bit better. And then we saw the BDI climbing, and so it was great. Or maybe in the past, we saw the BDI decreasing, but they were doing a great job of, getting good charters. They were still doing, expanding out their fleet, and they were doing okay. And so it really wasn't that big a deal. Or maybe in the past, we saw their valuation not make any sense whatsoever, but they were adding, new vessels. They were not having to do too much capital raising, and they were using the cash that they already had on hand in order to acquire new vessels. And the BDI was increasing, so they were like, oh, we're getting new vessels, and the amount that they can charge per vessel is increasing, so maybe this valuation will make sense eventually. But when all three of these go down, then we start to really see this stock fall. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. Let's go ahead. I want to pull up the technicals and I want to take a look at why I'm very not bullish on this company short term. And then I'll talk about what I expect from them long term. So if we do go ahead and we just take a quick look at what exactly is going on with this stock, we can clearly see that they have broken pretty much any trend that they were in whatsoever. I mean, they were already in a bullish downtrend, but it has just gotten much worse over the last few weeks. Now, I mean, realistically, we have seen a few different levels of resistance. They cleared this level of resistance with ease, which was the very first, time I got a little bit nervous. We saw it start to, it kind of fell through it here. I mean, that was the first time that I thought, oh, this thing's going down. But then we saw a bit of recovery and I was like, oh, okay, maybe that was just a, that was just a little standout moment. Maybe it'll be okay. Well, the moment that we just burst through this resistance, I was like, okay, that's not good. That is just simply not good. And then once this downward trend continued, I started to keep a close eye on it and started to plan an exit. Well, I knew that we had a point of resistance here that I was nervous about whether or not they were going to clear it. Because if they were to clear it, I was like, this thing really might start to fall to some of these lower levels. Now, whenever you take a look, it was consolidating within this level for quite some time in the past, and we smashed through that. And at that point, I exited. I got out because I was like, this thing is at this point not showing me any signs of resistance or any reason that it is not going to continue to fall. So once it started to clear this level with relative ease, I got out probably around like the 65-cent mark and saved myself 20 to 30% of losses there. Right now, as it has started to clear, let's go ahead, let's zoom in a little bit. Each one of these are going to be resistance points that I've kind of determined just from previous levels in which they were at. And as we can see here, they are having not much issue clearing through these levels. So personally speaking, short term, this is not looking good. I'm not excited about what the future is going to hold for the short term future is going to hold for the stock price until I start to see some major resistance. If it somehow happens to clear 30 cents, I will probably just stop following this stock for a while, as at that point it has pretty much erased any gains that it has made recently, and I would be very surprised to see it start to turn around within the next year or two. Now, personally speaking, I do believe that what they are doing for the company makes sense. I do believe that the fact that they are expanding out their fleet is a great thing, but I think in comparison to some of the other players in this industry, I can't see an investment in them making sense just yet. I would need to see their market cap, I need to see their valuation decrease dramatically, I would need to see their revenue increase dramatically, and I would need to see that gap fill for it to make sense as to why I should invest my money into them and expect that it is going to continue to grow. I would also need to see their revenues being the main provider, and them using their revenue in order to acquire some of these new vessels instead of just consistently diluting down shares, because at this rate they'll be in the billions by summertime. And so with that being said, I would need to see a few different things for me to want to re-enter on Castor Maritime. I think long term they do have a lot of potential, and right now if you just stick through it, you may see some success in the future. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I am saying that for me personally, for me to feel comfortable with this investment, a lot of things do need to change, and it does make sense as to with all of these different factors weighing down on the stock why we're seeing it fall so much. So Leslie, I hope that did answer your question. Again, if any of you do have questions, leave them down in the comment section, leave them in my Patreon, send them to me on Instagram, send them to me on Twitter. We will get this series going. You guys have been loving this series. I've been loving answering your questions. It's so much more personal, and I would love to continue to do so. So keep on sending me those questions. But with that being said, I post on this channel 2 to 3 times every single day, and I can't wait to see you all next time. Peace.